I am a lawyer, but I am not necessarily your lawyer. The materials discussed in this podcast are for informational purposes only and should not be deemed legal advice. If you have a specific legal question according to your circumstances, then I encourage you to speak with an attorney licensed in your jurisdiction. Welcome back to another edition of Ag Law Today. And today we're going to be talking about direct farm marketing. With us, we have Rich Shell from the Chicago land area. Rich, how are you doing today?
I'm fine. How are you, Karen?
So why don't you introduce us to the listeners, tell us what you do, who you serve, etc.
Sure, I'd be delighted. I'm a lawyer, of course. And I grew up in 150 years of multi-generational farm family experience. And I had a farm. I was looking at things you could do to make more money. And I had been president of the Chicago Farmers, which is a 501 group that focuses on farmland investing. And that led me to work with organic and other things. And all that led to an interest in direct farm marketing for myself, which didn't pan out. But along the way, the Illinois Stewardship Alliance said we need somebody who would write a legal guide for direct farm marketers. I said, well, I'm a lawyer. I grew up in a farm family, and I did happen to work as a legal editor for Westgroup, so I'm sure I can write a legal guide. So I did. And at that point, it was the first legal guide. So the first in Illinois, Neil Hamilton of Drake, wrote the national legal guide to direct farm marketing. He went out, got a grant, got USDA to bless it, and for the first time ever, Carrie, if you were in Illinois or Ohio or Tennessee and you wanted to go, hey, how do I sell chickens? How do I sell a chicken to a person? Or how do I turn the chicken into chicken meat and sell it? For the first time, Neil put it together, and there was an answer to that question that, ordinary people could find relatively easily.
Well, to our listeners, I just wanted to have a big caveat that direct farm marketing law is state specific. And Rich and I are both recording this podcast as we sit in chairs in the state of Illinois. I think there's going to be a little bit of focus on laws in Illinois, laws in Indiana, laws in Iowa, laws in Nebraska, you get my point, are going to be slightly or perhaps even dramatically different in specific areas. So I just wanted to stress to our listeners is please reach out to a food and agriculture lawyer in your jurisdiction if you have any specific issues about the issues that we're going to be talking about here today. So Rich, I don't know if you know this, but I have a farm, like to call it Carrie's Farm, outside of Champaign, Urbana. I've got some boar goats, some chickens, a few steers that I'm feeding out. I've got some rabbits and some vegetables, so on and so forth. So what I thought that we do today, Rich, is sort of walk through the various issues of direct farm marketing using my farm perhaps as like a hypothetical.
Okay, where to start out? First off, you get a gold star for using the word caveat, because that let everybody know that two lawyers are talking. So, true story, Rinker, the very first meeting I ever went to on direct farm marketing was about a brilliant entrepreneur who had the scheme of lambs and getting lambs to Chicago for Greek Orthodox Easter. And he did this fabulous presentation. At the end of it, he said, of course, I want to offer a caveat that, your results may be completely different. And I walked up to him afterwards and I said, I've got to tell you, I grew up in Polo, Illinois, which is an island of 2,400 people surrounded by a desert of corn. And not once, not ever at the grain elevator did any of the guys there say caveat. And I said, so I'm thinking there's more to the story. So, well, of course, I've got an MBA and I worked for Cargill for 10 years doing grain merchandising. And I said, I figured you did. So, yeah, we can perfectly start with yours. And I follow you avidly. I follow all your adventures on Facebook related to the farm avidly. So, yeah, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it If Carrie wasn't a brilliant lawyer who knew all this stuff already, what would I do? Well, I wrote the Illinois Legal Guide for it, and I've always said my goals for it are very simple. If you go to the back and you follow the checklist, you should not be bankrupt or wind up in prison, at least for the first year.
Oh, sorry, Richard. I just wanted to note that this legal guide is excellent. It's called Guide to Illinois Laws Governing Direct Farm Marketing for Farmers and Other Food Entrepreneurs. We'll try to tweet the link to this, Rich. And do you know where folks can maybe find this online?
No, it's real easy. Google Illinois Stewardship Alliance Legal Marketing Guide, and it'll take you right to their website. And you can download it in English or in Spanish.
Excellent. So Rich, I have like this vegetable part of my farm, and I'm trying to get back to the days of canning. All right. So I have this aspiration of going to learn to can like my grandma. And what I'd like to do is try to make some jams and jellies. And perhaps, I do. Some jams and jellies.
You're conjuring up images of my poor mother and my sister sweating to death in August canning stuff. So you want to can stuff.
I want to can, like the good old days, and I'll wear a fancy apron and everything. And I want to take my jams and jellies to the local farmer's market, okay? And I believe that this falls under what's called cottage food law. So it's home-based food processing, right?
Exactly. That's exactly where you need to look. You need to go look at the Illinois cottage food laws, and you'll find out that there are exemptions, and, like most exemptions to all of this, you can do it. You can do it in small amounts. And I think the limit is pretty low in Illinois on how much you could make by doing it, but you can do it. That is the good news. If you look at the Illinois cottage food law, it'll tell you exactly which species and things you can and which ones you can't. You'll be shocked to know as a foodie that we lean towards things where the bacterial risk is low. You won't be making sushi, Winker. Let me put it that way.
So
you'll be making stuff that has a lot of kill steps, that has a pH that's not friendly to bacteria.
Got it. Do I need to get a permit or anything here in Illinois, let's say with the Department of Agriculture or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you something very different than that. What I'm going to tell you is the first thing you need to do is call your local county, because there are 100 or so counties in Illinois, so there are 100 or so different opinions on what you actually need. There is a law and all that, but if you want to follow with your county in the first week, it's going to be a miserable trip. So the first thing is to start out with the county and public health and ask them, so what do I need to do?
So when you say call the county, what entity in the county are you encouraging folks to call?
I'm guessing that it's going to be a rural thing, so you need to talk to the public health people who would do, the restaurant inspections and certify the kitchens and the churches and do all that kind of stuff, and ask them, so in my county to do cottage food, what do I need to do?
Okay. Are there any special requirements for my food label? I wanted to say Carrie's Farm. Do I need to put an expiration date or where it was made or any other? Are there any label requirements?
Yes, there are label requirements for all of this stuff. You're on the right track. You're certainly going to have to tell people where it came from. And you're certainly going to have to give them a rough idea of what it is. And then you're going to have to, let me stop you. Then you have to look at the guide and pull the cottage food requirements out of it and go through it line by line and make sure that you've got at least that part of it down. And or you can Google the statute and read it, but that's more of a lawyer kind of thing to do. But, so basically, I'm at the legal guide right now, refreshing my memory. So, yeah, under this law, can it be a potentially hazardous food as defined by FDA? So you're not going to do things like meats, and you're going to do non-hazardous baked goods like jam, jelly, preserves, fruit butter, dry herbs, dry herb blend, and dry tea blends. Now, what you're not going to do with this is the produce, because, as you know, the produce, before you cook it, has no kill step. So it's not exactly what we like in terms of, although it was, Carrie. I mean, when you and I grew up, I always used to tell people, you want to understand how food, processing and regulation works? Go eat an apple. Nobody cares. Before the Food Safety Modernization Act, people just didn't, that wasn't on the radar because it just wasn't. Then when you slice the apple up and you start going, Shell, this is going to sell a lot better if I give away slices from Carrie's beautiful orchard. You're right, Carrie, it is going to, but now you need a temporary food permit because now you've opened up the apple and potentially if you don't have clean hands and you don't have a clean knife, you've introduced bacteria to it. Now
So
make the next logic.
Let's talk a little bit about the Food Safety Modernization Act, or, lawyers like to call it FSMA. So this is a fairly new or newish law. I think 2010, it got set forth, or I think around the time that we had worked on that webinar with the American Bar Association, FSMA was rolling out. So what are some big points with FSMA that you think a small producer like me that's wanting to do direct farm marketing should keep in mind?
Well, I'll get to that, but let me tell you the progression and then that'll help explain FSMA and where it's going to. So Carrie had the apple, and before the Food Safety Modernization produce controls, Carrie could basically just take the apple and sell it. Then Carrie sliced open the apple and she needed a temporary food permit. Now Carrie makes the next logical step with her apples, which was cider. And then the entire weight of the United States federal government falls on Carrie's head. And why is this, Carrie? That's because in Washington, a 3-year-old got a windfall apple of unpressed cider and she died of E. coli. So the entire weight of the federal government now falls on juice. And you need a HACCP plan for juice. What is a HACCP plan? The Hazard and Analysis Control Plan analysis to make sure that you basically produce food as safely as you can. So to understand, this is my take, Carrie. Others will disagree, but, you're talking to me today, so I'll give you my take. My take on what FSMA does, whether you call it or not, is it makes HACCP part of food policy in the United States, which is you should analyze and look at hazards, you should identify critical control points where hazards occur, and you should minimize them. And then for your listeners, you should ask, how did we get here, Carrie? And this is where I always tell people bring food law. You got here because in the 60s, the United States was going to do something it had never done before. It was going to put men in orbit around the Earth, and eventually women, but men started it. So NASA looked up and said, boys and girls, if Neil Armstrong were to be up-checking right before he went on the moon or crippled with stomach diarrhea, this would be bad. If these crumbs were to get into some of our things in free fall and short them out, this would be bad. So how do we fix that? So they asked people from Pillsbury, if you had to develop an absolutely safe product for astronauts, what would you do? And they came up with HACCP. So if you think you don't understand it as a food entrepreneur or as Carrie's farm, you shouldn't understand it because it's a way of thinking developed literally by rocket scientists and food scientists working together. But let me finish, because the alternative, Carrie, is what's called end-of-pipe inspection, which is, it's 1900 and Carrie's worried that every time she eats sausage, she's going to be eating sawdust. There's a pretty good chance you are. She's worried every time that she eats anything from the Chicago stockyard, it's going to be some cow that was filled with lacerations and infection and brucellosis, and they kind of dragged it in enough to kill. Carrie would be right. So what did they do? They started putting inspectors in meat plants, like Carrie, as you know so well. At that point, it's too late to fix it. All you can do is sniff the cow and go, okay, seems okay, or it doesn't seem okay. And that's the whole point of FSMA and HACCP in a nutshell. How do we build the safety and control points in as we do it so that they're measurable, verifiable, and the food's safer?
Got it. So, hey, Rich, I'm teaching at Vermont Law School right now. I'm teaching sort of a local food law course. And ironically, this week, we're talking about liability and how to mitigate that risk. And
right there.
agritourism.
You have to listen to the punishment story about liability, and then I'll answer your serious question. So, Carrie, I have a rule of thumb. I no longer do favors for people who may be governor of Illinois. You have to be governor now. But in the days when I was more generous, one of their minions said, Rich, we're doing an ag tourism workshop in Galena. would you go and do it? Would you talk about liability? And I said, yes, I would. So it was a nice crowd, and at the end I told them a funny story, which is true. The funny story is that when my father was slowing down and farming, he bought a shack on the other side of the big town of Polo. And at his funeral, one of my relatives said, "Did you ever wonder why he bought the shack?" And I said, "Well, of course I know why he bought the shack. Bought the shack to refinish furniture." And he said, "Did you ever see any furniture go in and out of that shack?" And I said, "Well, not a lot." So he bought the shack to make moonshine. And because he had asked all the good old boys he knew who had made moonshine successfully, how do you do it? And they all said the same thing. Make sure everything's copper, and because you don't want lead, because that'll poison the customers, and that's bad for business. And the second thing was, God forbid that the United States federal government, in the form of alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, will show up to collect all the excise taxes that you should be paying for distilling whiskey. Of course, it's an illegal still, so nobody's paying the taxes. Because, Carrie, if the federal government shows up, they can seize all of the property related to the still. So you're a lawyer, so you wouldn't do it, but let's say, your neighbor does this, and your neighbor's got an illegal still, and they look up and go, "Wow, there's a lot of excise taxes. We'll take that farm. That'll pay for them." So my father realized if you're going to lose something that went disastrously wrong, you should really lose that shack on the other side of Polo and not 200 acres of farmland. That's liability management in a nutshell. So this lawyer, I got a call 2 days later, and this person kept calling me, and it was a lawyer in Galena. I said, "Oh my God, Terry, the referrals are coming in. This is good. I've hit the jackpot." So I finally answered the phone, and he said, "You shall." I said, "Yeah." He said, "You really a lawyer?" I said, "Oh yeah." And he said, "I have to sell everything you buy, Jack." I said, No. I told him the same thing you would tell him. Carrie's got 1,000 acres of Illinois farmland, $12.5 million on the hook, conservatively. Carrie decides to get into a business hauling dynamite. Carrie's got to have 7 different corporate entities and a management plan to keep all the liability of the dynamite as far away from the 1,000 acres of farmland as is humanly possible, given her considerable legal skills. So when you think about liability management, the first thing you do is not lose the farm. So how do you not lose the farm? You do a couple of things, Carrie. You educate yourself about food and risk, but food and risk is like driving. No matter how safe you are, it is a risky proposition. If you get food wrong, people get sick and die. There's no other way around it. So you get really good at understanding the risk. You manage the risk. You actually do all the fizz and the hass of stuff and educate yourself to lower the risk. Then you shift the risk over to an insurance, and then you form an entity. So if everything goes under, hopefully Susan's LLC goes bankrupt and Susan does not.
So, Rich, with that in mind, do you recommend for farmers to form one entity or two? And what I mean by that would be perhaps one entity would own the land and the other entity would own the operating company with the livestock, the farm equipment, so on and so forth.
Well, Harry, as I always say at this point, asking lawyers whether you should form entities is like asking insurance people whether you should buy insurance. Very few lawyers are not going to immediately say you should form entities, but yeah, I think that you should form as many entities as you need to do what you need to do. And there are a lot of pluses and minuses about putting farmland in entities. But, Carrie, one of the great advantages of entities as opposed to farmland is the Chicago farmers did a play, Map of My Kingdom, by the poet laureate of Iowa. It's about people coming to grips with farm inheritance. And I treasure my English literature degree a lot because when they said, when she talked about Lear, I got it. Lear is the Shakespeare play about a king who has 3 daughters, and he's getting old, and he summons his 3 daughters and says, "Here's the map of my kingdom. Who loves me most shall have it." Well, Carrie, this is otherwise known as farm estate planning. You will never know your relatives as well until you have settled a farm estate with them. And as I say, the reason why we do reality shows about people naked on islands and not farm estates is that the farm estates would frighten the children. Because it's not It's not a CV. It's not a bank account. It's blood, it's sweat, it's tears. Who loves me most? It's been here for 150 years. But what you get with entities, Carrie, is you get an ability to look at people and say, this entity has been funded with $2 million worth of life insurance. If you got the $2 million worth of life insurance money, would you be okay leaving us the farm? And Carrie, as awful and heartbreaking as for me as it was to leave farmland, I look up and I say, living a mile from O'Hare, my children would look at the family farm that meant so much to me, Carrie, and they would have one question. You know what the one question would be?
What was that?
How fast does this become a condo on Lakeshore? Condo.
Oh,
How much is 100 acres in condo? Is it a nice condo? Or is it, because it lets you have a discussion about estate planning that isn't about who loves me most, and it can just be about money.
All right, along those same lines with risk management, you mentioned insurance, and what kinds of insurance would you recommend to a small farmer like myself who's interested in getting involved in direct farm marketing?
Well, let me back into this the other way, Carrie. What are you going to do?
So
what are you going to do? Are you going to be like Wes Gerald and Wesley Cooperman and have, people come out to the farm? Are you going to be more like a grain farm where two people you don't know come on every year? Is it going to be like a pumpkin farm where you're essentially Disney World welded to a pumpkin patch? What are you going to do?
So my vision, Rich, is I'd like to have my farm become an educational tool. So I have school kids come out and they can come and they can see the animals, and then I'll teach them about production agriculture. But then I'm going to also sell my food products to consumers, such as eggs, goat meat, beef. I haven't decided what I want to do with those rabbits yet. So, and then as we already talked about, the jams and the jellies and maybe some vegetables.
Okay. All right. I'm going to give you two answers. One is the short answer, and one is the more thoughtful answer about risk management. They're both thoughtful. Well, one is the short and sweet one. Go forth and educate yourself about commercial general liability insurance as opposed to farm policy insurances. Farm policies are designed more for grain farms where three people you don't know come on them. Commercial general liability insurance is what retail operations and almost everybody else in business has. It covers a lot more risk. It's harder to get. It costs more usually, but it's real insurance. Because, Carrie, I'm going to tell you the joke that I tell everybody at this point. The reason why you get insurance is the duty to defend is broader than the duty to indemnify, which means that even if you never have a problem at all, and you know this, it's for the readers, for the listeners. So let's assume they never have a problem, but somebody looks up and goes, I sprained my ankle, I'm going to sue you. Then you in turn, as you must, that claim over to the insurance agency, and you get a lawyer at that point. It may not be the lawyer you want. You may not feel they're very good. You may not feel that they have your interest at heart. You may feel that they're really working for the insurance company. But the insurance company has to pay them to defend you whether or not they are successful in the claim or not, because the duty to defend the insured is bigger than the duty to pay. So
got it.
You got to get that because you get prepaid legal. Now you got to listen to the joke, although it's not really a joke. And, you're a little bit different because you're a lawyer, but for anybody who isn't, you think about yourself. I'm in court. There's someone in a black robe that's very stylish. They're a lawyer. I've got a lawyer now because I'm getting sued and the insurance company is paying for it. And the other side almost certainly has a lawyer or they wouldn't have brought the action in court. So the joke is, Carrie, any day 3 out of 5 people make money is really a good day. It's just not going to be you.
Yeah.
It's so true. So you got to have it.
So, Rich, my farm is not an organic farm right now. I don't have organic goat meat or organic eggs or anything like that. But, if I wanted to go that direction and have my farm be organic in the future, what are some legal considerations that I should keep in mind?
Well, The biggest one is 18 U.S.C. 1001, which is the bane of the political class in Illinois, which is the federal crime of perjury. So, you got to actually be organic. That's the first thing. There is an exemption. You can do it and say it's organic for a really small amount. But if you're really going to make money on it, you've got to get certified. And certifying requires that you find an organic certifier and that you jump through all the hoops that the U.S. Marketing Associate, the U.S. Department of Ag marketing people require you to, because organic is run through the marketing section of USDA, not the production section.
So Rich, my egg cartons that I have, if I give people eggs, they say happy hens, natural, free range. And my question for you, those three words, happy, natural, free range, are they regulated at all?
Well, everything. Everything's regulated to a certain extent, just because, no matter how thin you slice it, people can always fight over it. But let's take them. You said, what were the three words again? Happy?
Happy. My hands are happy.
Okay.
Second, natural.
Okay.
So is there a definition for the word natural?
The short answer is not really. The FDA is kicking it around. I've not seen that they've defined it fully. There is for meat. On the USDA side, there is a natural definition for meat. So that's why, I'm painting with a broad stroke here, but that's why you can say everything's gluten-free. Milk, naturally gluten-free. Well, of course it is. I've never had gluten to begin with. So natural is a very slippery term.
Yeah. Rich, I'm not as up on the litigation in this area, but I know there's been a tremendous amount of litigation over the word natural. And from what I understand, we still, at the end of it, still don't have a definition, or at least not a clear one. So what a mess.
No, well, it is a mess. But Carrie, remember, it's a feast for the lawyers. So,
and then
the last, of course. Yeah, that's a real definition. That one is in the USDA, and to sell those as organic eggs, you'd have to read the standard, you'd have to conform to the standard, and you'd have to have an organic certifier.
So what type of marketing claims would I have to get approval for? So clearly I would need to get approval to use the word organic, right? I need to be certified organic.
Right.
But past that, what are some words I should stay away from unless I have a stamp of approval?
Well, okay. Let's look at it this way. If, you're gonna, I use the case Jorgensen, which is, everybody should read Jorgensen, because Jorgensen is one of the few cases that would actually make a very good movie. These are North Dakota ranchers, and it's the first time these things have come about. Okay, it's the first time natural is a big deal. It's the first time feed identity is a big deal, and you're you're an animal ag kind of girl. So imagine that you're a North Dakota rancher and you're looking up and you're going, "Wow, we've done ranching for a long time." And I know this is going to surprise you. I hope you're sitting down, Ranker. Cows don't always make a lot of money. I know that shocked you.
I know.
So what do? Well, you find out what these people want. And what they want is, they want exactly what you're describing. They want a cow that's natural. They want one that's millet. They want one that doesn't have antibiotics. It doesn't have hormones. It doesn't have that. They produce it, Carrie. They have succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. But again, Carrie, I'm going to tell you something. It's a non-denominational observation. But in the Christian tradition, when the prodigal son comes back, he looks at his father, and the father's like, "Gosh, you're back! I'm so glad. We're gonna slaughter the fatted calf." The disgruntled brother looks up and goes, "I, for my friends and thee, have never even given me a goat." Okay, how long does it take to get a goat? Years.
Well, yes, I guess you're right.
How long does it take to get a cow, animal ag person?
Well, 9 months, right? So
no, it takes 9 months to get a baby cow. How long does it get a cow you can eat?
Oh, it's about 2 years.
You are right. Yeah. And that's why it's so much fun to talk to you about it, because you will get this right away. And I got to really explain this a long time and use that story for all of the food law people, the food science people I teach who never thought about it. It takes a year for a dough, but to actually get a cow you could eat that would be like this, that would be millet, that would be antibiotic free, that would be all of these things. You said you did, Carrie, because you said this in, again, the bane of the Illinois political class, which is the mail and wire fraud law. These people went forth and said, Carrie, you buy our beef, it's natural. It doesn't have antibiotics. It doesn't have any hormones. It's got this perfect thing. And look, you can even look and see whose baby cow and mama cow is. Oh, I'm going to pay for that, Carrie. And not only that, I'm going to pay you guys a lot more for that. And here's what happened. You can watch Smitty walking in from, the floor, walking to the CEO, and Smitty comes on and knocks on the CEO's door and says, boss, we got a problem. What's the problem, Smitty? Boss, we don't have any more cows. What? Well, boss, we used them all up. Well, go get more cows. Boss, there aren't any more cows like ours. There aren't any more natural, organic, exactly what we promised the people. Well, Smitty, I'm not going bankrupt today. You go down the street and you go to that beef trim plant and you go get it, and we'll just sell it. Well, Carrie, the reason why before the Obama administration, there were the very few CEOs of food companies that ever even came near a federal prison is they sold 1 million pounds of it. That's not an oversight. That's not your business model. What's your business model? Well, we tell them it's all this natural wonder stuff. Then we go to the beef trim plant down the road and we buy that and sell it. It's working good. And it was working good till the federal government charged them with mail and wire fraud. So the short answer to your question is make no claims that will get you in trouble with federal fraud, mail and wire fraud convictions. Otherwise, you'll be like Illinois governors, and it'll be a bad day.
Got it. So in terms of selling meat directly to consumers, for example, on my farm, I sell, you can buy a quarter or a half or even a whole steer. The same thing with goats as well, with goat meat. Is there anything specific that I need to keep in mind when I'm selling that direct to the consumer? So I wouldn't be selling at a farmer's market. They'd literally just be buying a quarter or a half for me, and then, I process it and deliver it.
Well, yeah, I'm going to tell you what the policy idea behind this is for the listeners. The policy idea behind this exemption for freezer meat. But I got to tell you a story. I had a friend did the same thing, brought the freezer, I got freezer meat from him. I got it in my refrigerator. It's wrapped in white paper just like you and my childhood are all parts of it, And I gave it to some of my suburban neighbors. And they looked at it and said, is this safe to eat? And I said, no, I'm planning on killing my family, and now I'm going to poison yours too. Of course it's not. Because it's just so foreign to them that you could get meat from someplace other than a jewel. But you can. But the fiction of it, Carrie, is this, that Carrie's got that cow, and Rich is going to show up with a hauler, and I'm going to take that cow to that type 2 meat processing plant, and then that's how it's going to work. The more you get away from that, the harder it gets. So you're not taking it to a farmer's market because you need the seal. You need the USDA inspection seal, because the way it works is the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic, Federal Food and Drug Act was passed in 1906 after the entire country was practically revolted and vomited from Upton Sinclair's book about what happened. Mm-hmm. And the full weight of the United States government said, you're not cutting up cows without an inspector there and selling it jewel. Now, Carrie brings the cow in. Shoot, if you decide to be really ambitious, you could probably slaughter the cow yourself. I would get help because it's a big job. But you could do that if you didn't ever sell it or give it to anybody else who wasn't a family member on your farm. You could process your own cow.
Well, Rich, I'm sure we could talk all afternoon about the myriad of legal issues that affect direct farm marketing, but we'll go ahead and close here this afternoon. And one last quick question for you, Rich. We've got listeners all over the country from coast to coast. If one of our listeners is looking for the right legal professional, somebody who really understands production agriculture and specifically direct farm marketing, do you have any advice for those listeners?
Oh, yeah. It's the same advice I always give people. You got to go to cocktail parties. You got to get out there and meet people because, you know, Carrie, there's maybe 4 of us in Illinois, and I can name all of us. There's you, there's me, there's the other 2 that immediately come to mind. Maybe if I count the people I've done fish with, there's 5 of us. But I've been around. There's just, you got to go hunt and look. It's not like finding a lawyer who can just form an LLC or deal with your speeding ticket. You really got to look, and you've got to get out and about and ask and say, you know, go to the things and see who's speaking and form your own network. Because there's more. There's a lot more, but there's not really an abundance of people who do local food.
Yeah, absolutely. And I cannot stress enough that I believe that every farm needs to have a food and agriculture attorney, that they know who to contact, who understands their operation. If and when, because I believe that there's going to be a when, there's an issue, and there almost always is. And hopefully that farmer can work with that food and agriculture lawyer to help them stay in compliance and work on preventative measures to keep things above board. Rich, thank you so much for coming here today. How can people find you?
They could email me. They can definitely email me.
What's your email?
Rschell, RSCHELL, at WagnerShell.com.
All right. Thanks again. Appreciate your time and your expertise.
Carrie. This was fun. It was fun to talk to an animal rights person who gets it. Good luck with the farm. Good luck with the goats. And everything.
Thanks. I'll try to send you some Carrie's Farm jam and jelly. So
that'd be good. All right, Carrie, go get them. Thank you very much for having me. Bye.